And the final request was that 2 electricity-related strategic documents be included in the glossary. And as I've advised earlier, for other reasons, that glossary section of the definitions chapter has now been deleted in its entirety. So there is now no glossary into which to put those documents.
Yep, that all looks good.
Thank you. Division statement, we have Peter Eamon.
I've just produced some papers and it's probably easier if people refer to those. So I'm just following on from the last workshop where the vision statement became a set of strategic outcomes and was proposed to be put into the introduction chapter. And my understanding, since I had to slip out from that, was that there was a request for a table to identify how the strategic outcomes related to the objectives in the strategic directions chapter. So the very first document that's paper clipped on, which is this table, lists the strategic outcomes, and I'll go through those in a bit more detail in a minute. And then the right-hand column indicates the objectives that relate to those strategic outcomes. So moving on then, everybody's happy with that, to perhaps look more closely at the strategic outcomes themselves. And that's the next page, so the first page of the stapled portion, which has some purple wording on it. We've made a number of changes in this document from what you saw last time, and the purple wording indicates the changes. First of all, the first couple of paragraphs are really just minor changes so that it fits into where it's now going into the introduction chapter. But the main changes are the changes to the outcomes themselves, and here we've tried to identify and highlight how the plan will deliver on the outcomes that are understood that the government has as imperatives. So there are some additional things like under outcome 1 there you'll see a new line, sufficient land for housing, industry, crops, etc. through to 2028. We understand that that was an imperative for the government, and so all the additions following below that are similar additions for that purpose. Plus, on the second, the back of that sheet, you'll see a new outcome 7, which is contaminated land, which I understand was also a specific outcome that the councillors sought at the last workshop. Perhaps I'll just give everybody. Yes.
Yep. Ref.
Right. So number 9, the healthy environment piece.
Yep.
Where it says endemic flora and fauna and the relationship of Ngāi Tahu to the Christchurch area is at least as apparent as European connections in the design of places. I mean, 2 questions really. How are you supposed to measure something like that? And secondly, one of the issues around drainage that I'm constantly being told about from, let's say, older persons who've been around for a long time suggests that a lot of the water flow issues stem from a shift to a more ecological approach to planting riverbanks, for example, with native grasses. And the rest of it, yeah. So I'm interested in those 2 aspects, like how are you going to measure this? Because it sounds like something that would be quite difficult to measure. So I'm just wondering why is it a bit of sort of waffle, or is it a realistic thing?
I think at the high level that these are pitched at, which is, I think, in terms of the first point you're raising, the intention there is to raise the profile of those areas that are of significance to Ngāi Tahu, and that is what I think it's trying to say, is that where there is the opportunity to do that, such as in new developments, that opportunity is taken as much where there is significance to Ngāi Tahu in terms of their relationship with the land, both historic and current, as in recognising past European associations with that area. So I think it's a matter of level. The detail of that will come out obviously more in terms of the specific provisions in the plan, such as in the subdivision chapter, but also there is a tangata whenua chapter proposed in the second stage as well.
And the heritage chapter, of course, too, which will look at ecological sites and cultural sites of significance to tangata whenua. I should also add that there are sections under the Resource Management Act that actually require us as a council to include certain things in our district plan, and this is one of them.
I think it's more the language, at least as a parent, is quite an interesting phrase to write, because as a parent suggests some kind of equality. At least as a parent suggests something that more than that equality. So I don't know.
Happy to
change it
if
there's a suggestion for a better word use.
Oh.
I think it was just trying to give that indication that that profile needs to be lifted and that this is the opportunity to do so.
Well, could we use the language that the profile of... I'm surprised that, why is the... maybe I'm just thick, but endemic doesn't seem like the right word to me.
Indigenous, endemic.
Yeah, Indigenous.
Indigenous is more commonly used.
Yeah,
Endemic suggests it's everywhere. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Indigenous. Happy.
So,
Yes.
so it's... What did you say? Improve the profile of Indigenous flora and fauna while maintaining our European connections in the design of places. I think you've got to mention both.
Yes.
But I think Raf's picked up on something that would be... Did the second issue that you raised get addressed?
It's just that the whole planting issue.
Oh yes, around the
in terms of sort of
ecology and...
Ecology taking more importance over the actual engineering aspects of our riverways.
I suppose that's outcome 6, natural hazards.
As Peter said, the key chapters that this will manifest itself in, these issues, will be the chapters yet to come to you. So that's primarily the heritage and natural environment chapter. And it's not to say that all Indigenous trees, plants are to be protected, not at all, but there will be scheduled areas such as ecological areas where they will be.
We had the market gardener guy in a few weeks ago who was saying that his gardens were being ruined by the way the river banks are being planted.
Right.
Yep. Anyway, just thought I'd raise it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's a...
Certainly take your point.
There's no I think that the outcome 6 is sufficient to say, you know, that there's a balance there on that. Yanni?
Concerned about the process. So the strategic outcomes, what you're telling us is you've amended this to take into account what government wants now, but we're actually... I mean, I can't understand why we'd do that. Why not we just submit it to the minister and he's got that process? But why would you make changes after we've already considered this now?
No. We haven't considered this. What we've done is we asked them to produce a kind of a vision statement for us to insert into the introduction, so that it wasn't part of the chapter, it wasn't part of the district plan review, because we were told that if we went through that process of having a set of principles, that we could risk...
No, I understand that. So if you take outcome 1, urban extent, I don't believe that we had a discussion about putting that in. You've said you've put that in because government wanted you to put it in.
No. We're having the discussion now, and we're sending this off to the government. And I've certainly asked them to frame things in a way that I'm hoping that will be acceptable to the government. But I've initiated that, not the government.
Cool. So what is sufficient land? Like, how do you measure sufficient land? Because we know the government wants to just keep increasing the supply of land regardless of outcome. So currently our zoning, we've got more than sufficient zoning capacity for housing, but people aren't developing it. So we're rezoning more land to be developed, which seems kind of Like, how do you make that call?
But it's the phrase. All we're talking about is the phrase, Yanni. So one of the strategic outcomes of this district plan review and our district plan will be that there is sufficient land available for housing, industry, commercial and other urban activities.
Yeah.
So, in accordance with the Canterbury Regional Policy Statement, it's just a statement of what the intent or the purpose of the district plan is.
What I'm trying to understand, though, in real terms, what this means is, potentially, the government has a different view about what sufficient is than us. So if we have it in here, we're actually opening up an opportunity for them to rezone a lot more than what we may feel comfortable with, and that's my concern.
I can perhaps help
Yeah, okay.
forestall or provide a useful answer here. The reason there's a particular reference here to the regional policy statement is because the government has actually indicated how much land it expects to be provided in terms of greenfield land through the amendments it made to the regional policy statement through the land use recovery plan. So this statement here is just indicating that what we have already been required to do, what we and the Regional Council have already been required to provide, is what we're proposing to provide.
So areas like the northwest, which we still have yet to review, the Mail site, those are all, the government has said we need to change those, so we will do that.
All the areas, there was a plan that was produced at one of the earlier workshops which had the greenfield areas indicated on it, so there were the green blobs right around the city which came from the regional policy statement. All those areas are now in the regional policy statement as areas that are to become urban in the future, and we are required in our district plan to give effect to the regional policy statement. So we are required to rezone those to urban in the future. So this statement is really just a reflection of what we're required to do anyway, but it reinforces one of the points that we understand is particularly important for the government, which is that we do actually get to rezoning all those areas of land.
Except we haven't had a discussion with our community about whether they want us to rezone and to what extent.
That's already been done, though.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And then under 4, what is the increased
Well, sorry, perhaps do you want to...
If I could just draw your attention to paragraph 4.1.6 of the report. There's a sentence in there that says, similarly, the LERP directs the city to ensure 20,742 houses are enabled through the proposed district plan by 2028. Now, we went through the figures with you as part of the residential chapter, and we indicated to you how that can well be achieved through the proposed district plan. So that's how we know that we can meet the guidance of this LERP statement. It actually stated a number of houses, and we did indicate to you through a chart there, which happy to send through again, how that is actually going to be achieved through the residential chapter as it stands at the moment. And the consultation, as the Mayor has indicated, has occurred through the 5 weeks engagement phase that we went through with the community.
I was interested in the area in the northwest that we were having some, doing as phase 2.
The Northwestern Review area doesn't intend to have any housing allocations as such. All of the housing allocations have been gone through with you as part of the residential chapter.
Just in terms of in terms of sufficient land for housing, industry, commercial, what I heard you just say was the regional policy statement has already rezoned that land. So effectively, we can't do anything inconsistent with that. So that area has effectively been rezoned.
It's not rezoned in the sense of zoning for a district plan. It's indicated as urban growth areas, greenfield areas under the land use recovery plan. The actual zoning has to occur in the district plan. Only the district plan can allocate land use zonings.
Right. And I was just trying to understand 4, increased housing opportunities within other lower density suburban areas. What does that mean?
So that's the additional minor houses that you would have heard about as part of the residential chapter. So the minor residential units, the small residential units that are being proposed to be allowed on existing sections with existing houses.
Right.
So it's those sorts of provisions. What we've tried to do with these additions, the things in purple, is really just pick up on anything we could think of that is already in the plan, has already been proposed, has already come before the councillors in terms of the workshops that we think are particularly important for the government to see that that's what we're trying to achieve. So there's nothing proposed in here that is new. The wording here just picks up some of the points perhaps that weren't picked up in the first version of this, which was the what's in black print.
Okay. Vicky?
I just wonder about the strategic outcomes, whether we're actually being bold enough with them. They strike me as somewhat sort of kind of a bit not bold enough in terms of what we want to achieve with the district plan. And I would have thought what we were trying to achieve with the district plan was actually creating very vibrant, lively communities. And what we seem to have done right the way through is to make sure that those communities interact well through public and active transport with the amenities that the people living in those communities need now and potentially into the future. And the other sort of guiding consideration seems to me to have been that we have looked, for example, in the housing at much higher environmental standards. We want good design, and we want to sort of put the human interface such that it fits with the environmental constraints rather than continually trying to fight the environment, because we will lose that battle. And I would have thought we could have been a bit bolder in what we were seeking to say about the aim of the district plan. Like the fact that we do want to create vibrant, lively communities where people interact easily and effortlessly, and where public and active transport links people easily to their everyday amenities. Those, and then something about this means great design-led, environmentally sustainable buildings and planning, and where the human interface fits with rather than seeks to fight environmental constraints, or something that actually says what we're trying to achieve rather than just we'll go this far because this is what we've been told to do. Because my concern is that at a later stage of this, that the design and the human elements of this will get zapped a bit, and I'm really keen that we put them right there, it's kind of in your face, so that they're much harder to take out.
I totally like that, and I wonder whether we could just capture those words and put them as the introductory paragraph to the strategic outcomes, so that instead of saying the strategic land use outcomes for the form, function, and structure, say all of the things that were just said, and then say that these and in particular we are seeking these outcomes.
Absolutely.
Because. In a way, we got ourselves into this position because we talked ourselves away from having a set of guiding principles because of the fear that would then influence how the plan was interpreted, and it would give people the opportunity to challenge things. And so we moved to let's take the outcomes that we've got already identified in the various chapters and make them that set, but then they've become outcomes and we've lost that set of guiding principles, and Vicky's just encapsulated in a single paragraph, in my view, the essence of what we're trying to achieve.
I understand and totally accept that we can do that. I guess I would bring you back to the point of the objectives and policies, though, and the objectives state exactly what has been requested by Councillor Buck, but there's no harm in restating some of that language in the actual introduction. Things like high quality residential environments, neighbourhood character,
but there's nothing that joins it up, and that's the trouble when you're doing a chapter by chapter. It's kind of like silo mentality applied to a written form rather than a organisational form.